Welcome to Undressing Intimacy, where we cut through the bullshit
Greggy,
so we can get naked.
you can't say that.
Why not? How would you say it then?
Well, maybe more like, welcome to Undressing Intimacy, where we undress emotionally so we can undress physically.
That's exactly what I said. Not sure what the problem is. Welcome to episode...
I think it's 28.
No, it's 27.
Oh,
But that's
27.
okay. Welcome to episode 27. We're so excited. Today we get to do something we've never done, so it's new here. We were able to invite one of the couples that we've been working with for a little while, Amy mostly, but I'm good friends with them too and enjoy having them, to join us. And they're going to talk a little about their experience as they went through coaching, some of the things that were challenges for them and how they overcame them, and how that experience influenced their lives. We're really excited to have Helly and Mark with us today, and we'll be talking to them.
And obviously, these aren't their real names, but obviously, we want to protect their identity.
Their innocence.
And their innocence. And you might know where these names come from. And if you do, you need to talk.
Yeah, we're a little addicted ourselves.
So, Helly and Mark, to start us off, what we want to give our listeners a chance to experience is what it's like to come to coaching and what your experience was. But before we get to that, maybe tell them what brought you to coaching. Where were you at? What point were you at in your relationship that you said, hey, we need to come get some coaching?
We had a long-standing kind of pattern, I guess you could call it, where we really synced up on kids, religion, goals, values. We just were really paired up well in those areas, really well aligned. However, when it came to sex and intimacy, collaboration in those areas, it was just like a tornado every time. And we'd go into this cycle of we both are a little bit avoidant when it comes to conflict and challenges there. And so when sex would become an issue, it would bubble up to the point of some sort of argument, or basically the same story, which was, I'm too much, I'm too sexual, I have all these desires and needs, and Helly's broken because she can't meet those desires and needs. She's not enough and never will be. And it was just this same cycle every time that we couldn't seem to get out of. And we knew that neither one of us wanted to be there. We knew that we had potential, and we both, when we finally got to the moment of having sex, we were able to connect actually pretty well. And we had good sex when we had it. But getting there was just so difficult. And for Helly, it was just so much work. And for me, it came along with all these expectations that could never be met, and all of this like anxiety about, why doesn't she want me? Why am I not enough? Why am I not desirable? And it just played out over and over and over again.
Yeah. It was just, this vicious cycle. And I would start to have this kind of tension build if it had been so many days without us having sex, where I felt like, okay, we have to, have sex in the next couple days. Otherwise, Mark's going to be like, I have to take care of him, I guess. Or he's going to start to feel pouty, and that's not sexy. And it was like a timer in my head all the time of, okay, it's been this long. I have to make sure that we have sex within this time frame so that this tension that is constantly kind of building will calm down a little bit. And that really made it feel like work. And it wasn't enjoyable for me.
It was a job.
It was a job.
Another thing you had to take care of.
Yeah. And I didn't feel like I was getting anything out of it really, except for that release of that building tension. And so after we would have sex, I would feel like, okay, we're good for a little while. I can let that worry go. But then it would start to build again. And
3 hours later.
A few moments later. Mark, get off of me.
exactly. So it wasn't enjoyable. It was a job. I didn't feel like I was getting anything from it. I felt like I was being taken from. And so eventually, I mean, we'd been married years and years, and we could not figure out how to get out of this pattern. And I eventually got to the point where I was like, I could go my whole life without having sex anymore. It just isn't enjoyable. And so after years of this pattern, we went through just a really busy, more difficult time. And I felt like we really started to drift apart. And we wanted to be connected, but just life was happening. And I could feel us both kind of disengaging and drifting apart. And during that time, we were still trying to figure things out. We had been in therapy. We had been in a group therapy. I had been in group therapy with a group of women who were in similar situations with their marriage.
Prior to that, we had done individual therapy and couples counseling.
Yeah, and we talked to our counselor about this, high desire, low desire dynamic that we just could not seem to break free of. And he was just kind of like, yeah, that's tough.
Good luck.
And yeah, it was so discouraging because
That's all you got for us?
that was literally all we got. So we're like, cool, I guess we'll just continue on. And it was just so frustrating because I was like, I feel like we have such good potential to really connect and really be good together. And we were in each other's way. We could never get there. So during this particular time when things were getting really crazy, we were kind of disengaging from each other for the first time, which was scary because I think we were both just exhausted. We'd tried all the things. We looked for all the answers. We just couldn't make it work. And so for the first time in our marriage, I really felt us disengaging from each other. During that time, I was reading Passionate Marriage by Dr. Schnarch.
And it kept you sleeping at night, right?
It's
a pretty heavy book, by the way.
It's a textbook.
It's a textbook. It's
Yes,
not
it
an
is.
easy read.
It really is a textbook.
It is
But a lot of good
not.
stuff in there. We're not doing
great.
There's good stuff, but yeah, it is.
It's heavy.
It's heavy. So I was reading, and there was a section in there that basically talked about infidelity and kind of why affairs happen. And as I was reading that, I was like, oh shit, we are in, this is
We're
us.
in the red zone.
Yeah, we are in a red zone. Like we are in a danger zone. We are primed for this to happen in our marriage right now. And I don't want that to happen.
Unfortunately, Helly had a really good friend that we had been friends with since college. We had a duplex right next to theirs. We had been close. Helly had been really her best long-term friend since college, this individual. And so there was a lot of just open communication. And during this time, her friend was also going through a very similar situation in her marriage. And she and I just talked about, I don't even remember how the conversation got started, but she and I started talking over text about the challenges in our marriage. And there was a lot of similarities between us. And Amy and I were actually just talking about this yesterday in another conversation, that when there are so many pressures from religion, society, and your own messaging that goes into that, paired with years and years of struggle to try to fix things that you just can't seem to get around, It's a pressure cooker for creating thought patterns that in the moment you think are completely justified, understandable, normal, and actually valid. You think that this is the only way, right? You start telling yourself things like, my sexuality is a problem and it just causes issues in our marriage. So I'm going to take that out of the equation. I'm going to take this sexuality elsewhere. And you start to tell yourself that it's to save Helly from me. It's to save her from the constant pressure of my sexuality. Because if it's not for that, everything else in our marriage is great. It's just this one thing that keeps contaminating the relationship.
You try and remove it. You're like,
you try to remove it. I'll just take this elsewhere, right? So I did that for years in online chats. I did that for years with people digitally, never in person, but just as a way to remove that from the equation, to try to give our relationship a chance to make it, because we couldn't get past this situation. And so you start into this mentality that is flawed, but in your mind, throughout all these different environments, you convince yourself that it's the only way. And you start to
it feels
convince
like
yourself.
the only answer or solution to actually save your marriage.
Right.
Well, when we don't understand the underlying problem, what's happening, right? I mean, our story is very similar, right, to Mark, where when I found out what I was doing to Amy and what was causing her, then I'm like, this is never going to happen again. And I went to very toxic independence at that point, and it's very normal. But you're still having the same problem, underlying problem. You know, mine was very much validation. I was looking for validation that I was okay. I think yours was very similar in that way.
Yeah.
So you're still trying to solve the problem, but you don't know how to because you don't understand the underlying problem you're trying to solve.
And that validation's a great point, because as I start conversations with Helly's friend, I start getting a whole load of validation.
Yep.
Right.
Cheap validation.
Very cheap, but very rejuvenating to my sexual self, because my sexual self had been looked at as just a complete mess, right?
Yep.
Too much, not helpful, not wanted. And so as soon as that starts coming in, Helly's friend and I developed a relationship, both emotionally connected and sexually connected. And throughout that time, really just pulled away from Helly in a really big way. And luckily for us and myself, I recognized after a few weeks of this that this is just not the solution or the answer. And was able to muster up the courage to approach Helly about this and tell her what's been going on, and give her a choice as to what she wants to do with that information, and determine where we go from there. Probably one of the hardest things I've ever had to do in my life. I was terrified that I was going to lose my kids.
That was just about the most terrifying.
Yep.
It was a very dark time, but it really became the catalyst for some very positive change between us, and somewhat of the pressure that allowed us to make some really hard decisions to move forward. And very luckily for me, Helly was willing to dig deep and navigate through that.
This is what it should be, but we see this so often, and it comes out in a lot of different ways. Your story is unique to what you do, but when we see it in couples, it's this same dynamic. It's this same of, I have this sexual desire, I don't know what to do with it. Even the thought of we have to do something with it is problematic, right? And a partner thinking, oh my gosh, he has this desire and I don't know what to do with it either, right? And I'm having to manage it. We're just set up in this way. And we like to say we weren't broken, but man, the system seems really broken, right? And you had both spent a lot of time trying to figure this out, studying it, going to therapists, and wherever we went, the answer is, well, good luck. This is just how it is.
Yeah. Yeah. And on my side of things, I have a lot of respect for Mark for coming to me and having that conversation. I did not suspect anything at all. So I was very blindsided. I mean, I had been reading that book and was like, oh, we're kind of primed for this. Mm-hmm. But I thought we had more time. I thought we could fix things before it got to that point. Mm-hmm. And that was a really hard realization, is it's here. This is where we're at, and this is our reality. And just the betrayal from not only my spouse, but my best friend who I had confiding in. It turned my whole world upside down, because she knew all of the difficulties we had been having in our marriage, and she knew all of those weak points. And I never suspected that those would then be used against me. And to get closer to Mark, that was extremely disorienting and just very difficult. I am so grateful that I had some resources to rely on through that time. I had a friend who I had been in group therapy with before, who had dealt with infidelity in her marriage. And I gave her a call, told her what was going on, and I just said, what do I do? I don't know what to do. And some of the best advice she gave me was just don't do anything. Just feel what you're feeling and don't try to push it away, which was huge for me because I'm definitely a shover of emotions. Mm-hmm. It was very hard for me to actually lean into that discomfort and not just ignore it. In like the immediate aftermath, I went to the Rocky Mountains and went on a crazy hike by myself. And I always enjoy physical activity, but I just felt like I needed to do something extremely rigorous to get myself out of my head and into my body so that I could really process those emotions that I was feeling. And that was extremely helpful in the immediate aftermath, was just to exert myself and allow myself to cry and allow myself to just feel what I was feeling.
The pain and the hurt and betrayal.
Yeah. It was, the two people, these were my two closest people in my life. Mm-hmm. And to experience the betrayal from both of them, it was just probably the most painful thing that I've experienced. So that was kind of the immediate aftermath, just how I dealt with it. There's not a lot of, I felt like in the moment, there just weren't a lot of resources or just knowledge of what to do in the face of infidelity. I think it's a very common experience, but it's still very underground and not talked about.
There's shame, there's all the things around it that we don't want to talk about.
Yeah, there's so many things. So I didn't, and having my best friend be part of the one who betrayed me, I really didn't know who to turn to. So that was extremely difficult.
Yeah, because you would have talked to her about this experience.
Yeah, that would have been
this would have been the place to process.
Your go-to.
That would have been one of your support staff.
Yeah, that would have been my support.
That as well.
Yeah, that was very difficult. I didn't know where to go. Luckily, I had known Amy. I had never worked with her, but I just reached out to her and said we were going through a difficult time and asked if she could take me on as a client, and she was willing and able. It was it was different with Amy. It was unlike any coaching we'd ever had before. And she was amazing. She worked with us both individually, and then we would also have couple sessions together. And I was able to process with her. I was able to say things to Amy that I was even afraid to say out loud, like, I don't even know if I want to be married anymore. And what I loved about working with Amy was just the choice and the freedom that I felt to just be able to express those emotions and have it be a completely judgment-free zone. She was just so good about validating and being like, yeah, I get you. Like, you're right. You don't have to stay married. That is your choice. But she did encourage that I continue to just work on myself so that whether I stayed in the relationship or left, I would be a more solid person. Because there were a lot of things that I needed to work on that kind of led into that dynamic and eventually that infidelity. So it was interesting working with Amy because sometimes some of the homework or assignments, I guess you could call them, that she gave us or gave me were so simple. And it was almost too simple feeling. She's talked about this before, but Amy and Greg are very big on the emotion sharing. And I think that was maybe the first exercise you gave to us, was to sit down and share the emotions that we had felt throughout the day. And I, like I said, was a shover of emotions. And that exercise, while being very simple in theory, was pretty challenging for me because I had to actually take note of what emotions I was feeling instead of just ignoring them and shoving them away.
Plus, we are both avoidant.
Yes.
And so everything was surface level. As soon as it got real deep and honest, it was like, yeah, we'll just not talk about that because
Let's
that's
skip
gonna
over
be
that one today.
uncomfortable. Yeah.
Yeah.
And this forced us to say very uncomfortable things to each other
Yeah.
that were honest.
Yeah,
Right.
I mean, it was the first time I ever really expressed my true emotions, I think, to Mark. And that was scary. And there were a lot of big feelings that weren't always nice, but they needed
Or
to be
easy
said.
to share. Yeah.
They were not easy to share, but they definitely needed to be said in order to clear the air. And he, to his credit, was willing and able to listen to those big emotions. I think sometimes as the spouse who didn't technically, I guess, cheat or wasn't unfaithful, there is more support and compassion. And so it was interesting just going through that process of having the permission, I guess, to be angry and having the permission to express that. And I know that those were really difficult things for Mark to hear, but they needed to be expressed and they needed to be said.
Yeah, and one unique thing that Helly already touched on that was important for us was that we did individual sessions with Amy, but then we also came together. And what we found was we were so dysfunctional in open and honest communication at that time that if we knew that there was something big that needed to be said and discussed, we just knew we weren't equipped at that. We just figured out every time we tried to do that, we spiraled into a very dysfunctional pattern. And so we would just save those things for when Amy could be there. And just having her groundedness during that time allowed us to say the things that we wanted to say, but also allowed Amy to come in and check us where we might not be showing up the way we thought we were. And then also to give us the space to be honest and hold space for honesty. And so those couple sessions were pivotal in us being able to speak honestly and receive honestly truths that needed to be worked through, but we could not do it without having Amy there to help us through it, because we would just slip so easily into old patterns and they would just spiral out of control.
Yeah. And there were quite a few times in an individual session I would share something with Amy that was a hard truth, but I felt like with her I could be more honest. But then when it came to sharing in a session with Mark, I would soften it or try to be less honest. And Amy, in a loving and awesome way, where I never felt judged, but she would correct me and she would call me on it and get the real naked truth out of me, which is what needed to happen, because we were so good about reading each other and trying not to cause rifts that we never really got to the core issues that we needed to talk about. And it was interesting, one of the first sessions that I had with Amy, I remember she told me that she didn't feel like our true selves were showing up and relating to each other. It was more our anxieties were dancing around each other, and that was causing this dynamic. And that was the first time I had ever heard that. But I think anxiety was just completely running the show. We were so anxious about upsetting the other person. We were so anxious about having committed to this marriage and then maybe realizing this might not actually work out and we might need to, go our separate ways. And that caused a lot of anxiety to even just admit that. But Amy was really great about teasing the anxiety away from our true selves and getting us to really communicate on a deeper level instead of just doing this anxious dance around one another all the time.
Another really good resource that we had at this time that was very helpful for me was Esther Perel's books around state of affairs and what was the other one?
Mating and captivity.
Mating and captivity.
Yeah, those two. Right after the affair, I read or listened to State of Affairs twice in a row, just so that I could fully understand my place in that dynamic. And it's a very honest take on affairs. If you have any sort of infidelity background within your current relation or past relationships, even if you don't, I think it's just a really good perspective to have. She does a great job with it. And then Mating in Captivity is just, it really helped to change our mindset around what an intimate marriage could look like and give choice to, same thing that I was in my mindset, this very limited mindset. Our marriage was in a limited mindset as well. And because of the dynamic between us, our intimacy was in this limited mindset of what it means to be an intimate partnership. And that limited mindset didn't give us a whole lot of opportunity to choose, didn't give us a whole lot of opportunity to be creative, didn't give us a whole lot of opportunity to explore and try to understand each other. And when you don't have all those things, it's very hard to truly know the other person because there's no room for them to show up. And so those two resources were also at this same time very helpful for me to realize that what I had done, how I had impacted the relationship, take ownership for those things, but also have a little bit of understanding of why that happened, have a little bit of understanding of what I can do moving forward. And then ultimately, between those resources and Amy, I think there was just choice that was given to the relationship. And I think that choice, the ability to really choose each other and choose our future together, was how we were able to reset and move forward.
Yeah. The other interesting thing about our situation, and I don't know that everyone is in this situation, when processing and going through this betrayal, I was able to let go of one relationship and work on another. So after all of this came out, that friendship was never to be revived. So it was an interesting dichotomy.
You mean the friendship with your friend?
Yes, the friendship
Not your
with my
friendship
friend.
with Mark.
No, not with Mark. Because I felt like when I was kind of in two minds when I was processing this betrayal of, I can't, like, these people hurt me and I have to get them out of my life because you shouldn't have people in your life that have hurt you. So it was interesting to let that friendship go and feel almost in a way like vindicated of like, okay, I stood up for myself. I'm not allowing that treatment to happen. But then the other mindset was there should be space for grace and love and forgiveness. And I just felt like with a marriage, it's so much more complicated than a friendship. And we had so much more of a life together. So I was able to choose to lean into that marriage and let the other go.
Yeah. I remember the two of you coming in, each in your own like wounded state, right? You in a double betrayal and Mark in a wondering if there was anything redeeming about his sexuality. And having the privilege to work with each of you through finding the redemption of your sexuality, Mark, and also Helly learning that you could not only trust yourself, but you could trust others too. And this sort of atomic bomb, so you say, that landed in your relationship, questioned some of your deepest fears, some of your most rooted insecurities and unknowns. And so individually, we worked through those, and then together, how do you rebuild, right? And it was like rebuilding a new relationship.
Yeah. We talk about this is our second marriage. You know, I re-proposed. We went out to Europe last week, and it was like our honeymoon. We really feel like it's a new relationship because it feels completely different. Yeah. Everything feels different. It's not the same relationship that we had. And it's not it's the relationship we always wanted. It's the relationship that we believed we could have. We just could never get there. Mm-hmm. You know?
Yeah, I think Esther Perel in maybe a TED Talk says you're going to have basically multiple relationships within one lifetime, and it's your autonomy and your choice to choose whether it's with the same person or with different people. And while I'm not grateful for the pain that led to this crisis in our lives, I am grateful for the growth that came out of it. I don't know that we would have dug in as deeply and done the work as intentionally as we did had we not been in such a crisis. And I'm just so thankful that we found Amy and Greg, and for the resources that we were able to rely on to get us through such a difficult time, because we had searched for resources before and we hadn't found them. And just that lack of hope and that lack of knowing how to handle the dynamic that we knew was a problem, I think eventually built up to this just complete moment of make or break. And so I guess my advice to other people would be, if you do find that you can relate to, some of that pattern that we were stuck in, Amy and Greg are an amazing resource to be able to help you to work through that, hopefully before it gets to critical mass. Mm-hmm. But even if it is at critical mass, your relationship can still be salvaged if you want that and if that's right for the both of you. If it can't be salvaged, there's still a lot of work that can be done individually.
Yeah, absolutely.
What do you feel like you learned individually most from coaching about yourself? And what do you feel like you learned about what it takes to make a thriving marriage?
What I learned most about myself, I think, is just how avoidant I was and how unwilling I was to dig into difficult conversations, and even just avoidant of allowing myself to feel and process my own emotions. Mm-hmm. And that created a lot of coldness and distance and withdrawing from Mark. And that's no place to be. I mean, I feel so bad for him having to live all those years with this wife that was completely detached and unavailable emotionally, physically, just unwilling to be vulnerable and engage.
Yeah, for me, Amy, I remember you took me through that exercise of a very scary exercise of digging into parts, right? Did some parts work. And I remember going
You had
back
some
into
great
it.
names for your parts.
Yeah, we identified that, I had this bouncer, this kind of bodyguard. I had the strategist, right?
The strategist.
And I was living in a way where my true self was locked away, hidden away. And my whole life, being the last of 8 kids in my family, being very small for my age growing up, having a lot of bullying, I had become very good at survival.
Very and strategizing
strategizing
to
every angle.
There.
How do I survive, right? And showing up as me was not safe at all, because my past had shown me that. And I was still operating under very adolescent mindsets around who I was, and those were coming into my marriage. And when Amy and I first did this, I realized that my strategist was running the show. I was watching every move Helly was making. I was reading everything that my coworkers, my boss, my family, I was just reading everybody. And I was really, really good at it.
And there was no you in all of that reading.
No, it was just reflecting what I needed each one of these environments to be in order to be safe, go through the ranks of my job, get promotions, be the peacemaker within the family, be the least amount of annoying or disruptive to Helly, just trying to keep everything even keel. Just keep it going.
I remember one of your emails that I still love, because Helly loves plants. And she was looking at plants one night, and I got
Yep.
an email saying, I wish I were a plant.
She would stroke me and feed me and love me.
Yeah. Well, I remember.
Amy has the same problem, by the way, so I get it. I get it, Mark.
I mean, I remember coming to the realization that I was jealous of these plants,
Yeah.
right? Like, and while
And
that's
how bottom
silly
pit
to
is that,
say,
right?
you know, and
Yeah.
like as embarrassing as that is to say, when you see your wife putting so much energy and love and affection into something else, and you can't seem to unlock the key to get that for yourself, and that's what I was trying to do. I was trying to get that, right?
Yeah, extract it out of her. Yeah.
Trying to, what do I got to
Be the
do?
perfect plant.
Yeah.
Right, like how can I strategize?
Paint yourself green.
Yeah, exactly. What is it going to take? And I was like willing to go. I was
To the depths.
strategizing. You know, I
Yes.
was, and
And I think it happened so fast for you, all the strategizing.
yeah,
It was natural. That's how he survived.
I
so
mean,
it's
it
not, he's
was
not even
just
thinking he's
survival
doing it. It's
response.
just that's just how he did it.
It gave me a lot of awareness. And after that, it went into the bouncer, right? And I went into toxic independence where my bouncer came out and said, okay, nobody will ever hurt me again. And I will wall off anybody that is going to try. So I became very rigid at work. I became rigid with Helly. I became distant from my family. And Amy had to really help me accept that and sit in that and be like, yeah, okay, that's where you're at. That's where we're at here. That's not a problem. That's not good or bad. It's just where you're at. But is that where you want to be? No,
Right.
it's not, right? And so then we had to do work to bring out my real self in that.
Right. Such a normal tendency. We just talked about it in the last couple of podcasts. When you realize you're in a spot that you just don't want to be in, you usually don't swing to the middle. Oh, I'm good now.
Yeah.
You like swing to the farther side, and you almost have to do it to try it. What is over there? What do I look like in
Yeah.
this spot, so that I can compare the two, so I can go, I don't want to be there either. Right?
Well, and you have to break some patterns. And
Yes.
sometimes
Yep.
you have to go
To the
into a
extreme to do
really
that.
strong position to get out of that pattern because it's so easy
Exactly.
to backslide. And if you don't hold firm in that and change something, even if you're changing too much in the other direction, at least you're breaking the pattern and you're able to discover something else.
Yep.
And after doing that, I was able to find some middle ground there. And I think it's important to illustrate the moment that Helly and I came through the fog. And I remember still, there were so many expectations I was putting on Helly. You know, like, this is my sexuality, and I really want you to meet me here. This is what I see our marriage being. This is what
You
I
had
see
a
successful.
well-constructed adult playground.
Yeah, and I wanted to bring her into it because I saw all the
Yeah, it's so much
potential
fun.
there.
Come do
Yeah,
here.
like
Yeah.
it's freaking awesome.
If you do
You
all
know?
this,
But what you guys have talked about, it's but I'm kind of dictating what play looks like in that playground. I'm dictating how it should go, and when you're being dictated to, it doesn't feel like
no
play.
fun there. Yeah.
And so
It's more about the who than it is the what.
yeah.
Can you invite this person to this space? Not, will
Like-
you do all these things for me?
Mark, sometimes we learned that we had to get the hell out of the way of our own selves,
Yeah.
right? To get where we really want to go.
And I remember being in a group session. I'd done a lot of thinking about things, where we're at, and some really hard thinking, like, is this a marriage I want? Can I love Helly if this current version of her is as much as she can give?
If it never changes,
Yep.
am I
If it
willing
never
to love
changed.
her exactly as she is? Yeah.
Exactly. Because I always was, I love you, especially if,
You would do these three things.
like, I believe in our
He's
marriage
so great.
because I
If.
believe it can get to, right?
Oh, years of that. Such years of that, right? Like, Amy,
Yeah.
if you take this course, if you would just find your own
Yeah.
desire, if you, yeah.
Which told you what about yourself, Helly?
I mean, I just felt like I was never enough, and it was
Never
Yeah.
measure up.
I would never measure up. It took a lot of my confidence away. It took a lot of my autonomy and choice away because I felt like I was performing.
Right. The sexual relationship, there's nothing for you there, right?
Yeah,
You weren't getting anything out of this.
Yeah, it was work, and it was a performance, and it was, is this good enough? Is he going to feel validated enough?
Is the goalpost going to move as soon as I get there?
Yeah, that was one thing that was a
Oh, you did this? Well, go over then. I got another part of the playground. Come over here.
It was, I always felt like it was moving.
Helly taught us one of the most wonderful terms in the whole entire world. She told us that Mark is trisexual. And I'm like, and then she explained he'll try anything sexual. And I'm like, I think I might be trisexual myself. So welcome to the club, Mark. I'm glad to be a member of your trisexual club. But that's just the way it comes across. Like we're such a high desire, have thought about it so long, and it's what we want to do. And it's all this time that if you would just join me in this, then it would be great. And let's figure out how to get our spouses to get there.
Yeah.
And what we learn is that we can't do that, right?
I still remember just a big turning point with us was, I don't even think it was in a session with Amy, but I just came to Mark and I said, I don't know. I don't know if I will ever be enough for you. I don't know that I will ever get to where you desire me to be. And that's really scary. And I've been trying for years. I've been trying for years and years and years, and it's never gotten to that point. And I don't know if you can choose me knowing that we may never get there.
Do you remember what I said?
You said you weren't going anywhere.
I didn't say that at that moment.
I don't remember what you said.
Like I'm packing my bags.
At that moment, I said, I don't know either, babe. I don't know if that's something I can do either. And that's what started me really thinking about that.
What do I really want? What am I really trying to get out of this? And
but her
it's such a different mind frame.
Yeah, absolutely. Her being willing to show up and say that honest truth, it fueled me going, yeah, I don't know if that's what I can do either. And that's what fueled me starting to thinking, like, can I accept her if this is all she can ever give? You know, like, and I had to really wrestle with that.
Those honest moments that we've avoided for so long because we've been taught, hey, if we go there, we're going to ruin something. But it's literally
the answer might be.
Yeah, it's literally those moments are the ones that change us, right?
Yeah.
I remember talking with my brothers about it. Just trying to process. And then it was in the couples session that Amy was like, do you have anything that you guys want to share to start this out? And I started with that, and I just said, you know what, babe? I don't know what the future looks like. I don't know what our sexual relationship looks like. I don't know how it's going to work out in the future, but I choose you as you are, and we might just have to get creative about how it looks. Mm-hmm. And just open up the mindset of like, we have choice. We can figure it out. I don't know what it's going to look like, but I'm choosing you, and I'm staying. I'm not going anywhere.
And I remember the coaching session before that, the individual one, where you came to that moment of surrender. You came into that session going, I don't know. And we just talked and followed and opened up and explored. Again, I don't ever have the answer for you. That's not my job. And nor do I ever want it to be. Mine is just to be to create the space,
the sounding board,
and the room for you to have that opportunity. And I remember you coming to this moment of surrender and saying, you know what? I want to choose her.
Now that's sexy, right, Helly?
Yes. And I think that's part of what our dynamic was this whole time, all these years we'd been married. I don't know that we ever really, truly chose the other person.
Nope.
Yeah.
Mark didn't feel chosen. I didn't feel chosen. I felt like we were spending so much time and effort trying to craft the other person into the version of them that we wanted, so that we could be validated, that we could be more comfortable.
That was safe for
Less
us.
anxious.
Yeah, a lot less anxious. And it wasn't until...
least exposing as possible.
Yeah. It wasn't until we showed up with that much honesty and just saying, this is who I am. I love you. I want to make it work, but I don't know if you can choose this version of me.
And if you can't, I get it.
Yeah.
I understand. As hard and as scary as that is, I don't want you choosing a version of me that you don't want, and I don't want you showing up as a version of you that you don't want to show up as.
Yes.
Like that's not what we want anymore. We wanted that for a long time, and then we realized what comes with that, and the pain and the hurt and the damage that comes from showing up inauthentically, and just the betrayal of self and the weight and everything that comes with that. And it's, man, we just got exhausted. We were just done. We were just done. And we're like, you know what? It's not worth it.
Yeah. Luckily, in our story, we were both able to choose to love the other person as their true authentic self. And I love that about our story. I feel like we always knew it was possible. We just didn't know how to get out of the way to get there. And we honestly would not be together if it weren't for Amy and her insight and the ability to dig in and get to those vulnerable and honest conversations. We owe all of our new marriage, all of our happiness, our just being able to keep our family together and raise our kids together, and just this new joy that we have. It doesn't feel like work anymore. It doesn't feel like tiptoeing around each other's anxieties, and we do still fall back into old patterns.
It's still not easy.
It's still not easy. We still have to choose to be courageous and vulnerable, and sometimes I don't want to do that, but I know that I know the emotional toll that will take, and sometimes it takes me a couple days of being stubborn to get back to who I truly want to be, but we've been given these tools and they work.
Yes.
They work, and we can catch ourselves in these negative patterns and get out of it, whereas before we couldn't. And it's just this gift that I am eternally grateful for, because we never would have made it.
No.
We were just in a place where we were both so exhausted that we did not see a path forward.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we do this because we love to do this, and this is why we love to do this, right? There's nothing more sacred than having gone through an experience. And even though our experiences aren't exactly the same, what a beautiful thing is to know that we've lived through similar experiences, and we can help each other get there. And it's been such a pleasure and blessing to know the both of you and have lived through this. I'm letting Amy catch her breath here for a second and talking, and she might just cry the rest of the podcast. This is how she was in the closet when I found her. That's why I told you. Oh, that's right. That's true. But what a pleasure it's been. And thank you so much for being vulnerable, to be able to come here and talk about this. And to me, I think it's a sign of true healing, to be honest with you, when I could talk about my pornography and I didn't care what other people thought. And yep, that's what I did. And this is who I am. It was a really changing part of my life. And talk about courageous, and it doesn't feel good in the moment, but thank you so very much for being willing to come on. I know this podcast will reach a lot of people, and they will hear it, and they will understand what you're talking about, and they'll be in various places in their marriage. And what a blessing it will be for them to be able to listen to your story. So thank you so much.
Hope that people in a similar situation can maybe identify some of those patterns and find resources before it gets to a point that we had to get to, because not a good place to be. There was a lot of pain and hurt that we had to sift through. And if you don't have to go there, don't. There's resources, there's people, there's opportunities to get the help you need.
But even if you are at that critical point, there's still resources and still hope.
Yeah. That was the other, Amy There was times where we were just like, there's no hope. This is a sinking ship, and there's nothing good that's going to come out of this. Nothing's changing. And so many times it was just Amy saying, you know what? I get it. I see potential. If you can't see it for yourself, trust that I can see it, and just trust in the process and stay in it a little longer. And how grateful I am now that we did that. Because it is remarkable what we have today. I'm just so grateful for it.
Yes.
Babe, you want to say anything?
I just want to say that I have this, I think, privileged opportunity to watch people face their deepest, scariest moments with such amazing courage, and just what profound respect I have as I watch people take this emotional journey into unknown territories that are literally terrifying. And I hold Mark and Helly and my other clients in such high regard for their willingness to go and do this work. And I also believe that it works.
Yep.
It does work.
I have absolute faith in that. And so I wasn't lying when I said I see. I could literally see within each of you, and also together in your marriage, that capacity and potential. And it is actually awe-inspiring to be able to witness that.
Again, thank you so much for being able to be with us today. We love you guys and appreciate you.
Thank you.
So grateful for you. So, well, this has been one for the ages right here. So appreciate it. Until next time.
Keep addressing your intimacy.
Close enough. All right.